G'day, you are listening to the Sirens of Audio. My name is Dwayne, and this is the Doctor Who audio podcast that you would be happy to be in isolation for 14 days for. Yes, the Big Finish app is available on Android and on Apple devices. I start with Android first as an Android user myself. I don't like that Apple stuff. But you can rest assured that with a Big Finish collection, your 14 days of virus isolation and self-quarantine will go just like that. Try that. That was a better finger click. The first one was a bit feeble. I've been prompted to come on and record this on a kind of a spur of the moment because earlier this week, Season 26, the Blu-ray set, Sylvester McCoy's Season 26, was released. And I went straight to the extras and I've just finished watching the documentary called Showman, The Life of John Nathan Turner. And it was one of the most touching documentaries that I have ever seen. I was lip wobbling. I was slightly blubbing. My eyes were glistening. It was a beautiful documentary. And I really felt for John Nathan Turner by the end of it. He was certainly a soul that had a lot to do with Doctor Who. And in the 80s, he had a lot of vitriol hurled towards him by both the BBC and the fans. He was a man who was stuck in the middle. And ultimately, the behaviour of people towards him, I think, broke him. He died at a very young age 54. Who knows what kind of stress that he had to undergo from his dealings with unhappy fans and his rejection by the BBC for various reasons, what that would have done to his health. And it really touched my heart. So thank you to, I think it's Chris Chapman, who did the documentary for that. I really appreciate that documentary. And they quoted a lot from the John Nathan Turner Memoirs released on Big Finish many, many years ago, which is still available from bigfinish.com. So make sure you grab a copy of that if you want to hear John Nathan Turner's recollections of his time on Doctor Who. It's a fantastic listen.
On one of the recording days of this story, I'd nipped to the office early to deal with some urgent problems before proceeding to Wood Lane for the studio. Just as I was going out of the door, Kevin O'Shea, the press officer, called and said that there was an article in a sci-fi magazine in which Eric Saward was interviewed, and it was extremely nasty stuff. Kevin met me in the tea bar next to the studio and gave me the magazine in an envelope. He said he'd come into the producer's studio office in an hour, adding ominously, "There are follow-up inquiries from other publications." I sipped my coffee and ate a ham roll. Pip and Jane advised, nay begged me, not to read it. I went to that office, turned down the talkback and read the article. I shook with rage. How could someone I'd worked with for so long say such things? If I was that awful, why had he stayed for 5 years? It seemed to me to have been written with the venom of someone who'd been fired, not someone who'd resigned. Kevin came in with a superbly written statement, and I signed it. I asked him to get a copy of the article to Jonathan as quickly as possible, and for the first time, I spent the entire morning in the producer's office. Many producers spend the whole time in the Tomb of Death, as I called it, but I preferred being in the main gallery unless there were private conversations, say with script editors or writers, for example, or urgent telephone calls to be made. At lunch, I realised that everyone was treating me with kid gloves. Clearly the news, and doubtless copies of the article, were being read in costume rooms, under the booms, in the scene dock. So I thought this just won't do. So I decided to do as the song says. Pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and start all over again. After all, over the years, I've worked with people whose parents have died overnight, and they've still turned up for work. People whose tragedies were much worse than an article by a former employee. So it was back to camera, lights, action, and let's get this show on the road. It was tough, though, especially when it hit the pages of the major trade paper at the time, The Stage and Television Today. But I will admit that I received so many charming letters and cards from people I'd worked with in the past, and many from the then present, and that meant a great deal. However, you always remember the first, and that was hand-delivered to the studio that day. It was from director Sarah Hellings. Subsequently, I went to an independent solicitor and the BBC solicitor, who both thought the matter should definitely be pursued. But when I discussed this with Jonathan, he told me not to bother. He kept saying, "He's gone and you're still here."
Yeah, if you haven't seen that documentary yet on the season 26 Blu-ray set, do yourself a favour and have a watch of that. It will really touch you. If it doesn't touch you, there's got to be something wrong with you. Because what that documentary does is it tells the story of John Nathan Turner, the human being. And it made me think of all the hatred and all the vitriol that seems far more intense, because it can be on social media, particularly YouTube and podcasts and other things, towards people like Chris Chibnall. Now, you think about the man Chris Chibnall, no matter whether you like his stuff or whether you hate his stuff, you just think about the fact that Chris Chibnall is a human being and he deserves some respect simply for the fact that he is a human being like you and me. And I've seen so much vitriol, so much hatred out there, so much personal abuse hurled towards Chris Chibnall. It's really upset me. Very upsetting. I get a lot of notifications on my YouTube account saying, watch this video, watch that video. How did Chris Chibnall destroy Doctor Who? Doctor Who's destroyed forever because Chris Chibnall is this kind of human and he's that kind of human and he hates people and he wants to do this to the fans and he hates this and hates that. I say to you, if you're one of those who are going out on social media or YouTube channels or whatever and accusing Chris Chibnall of hatred, I say that you are the one who is causing hatred. You are the one that needs to take a reality check and get yourself back down onto the planet Earth, get yourself out of that fictional world of yours where only your opinion is real and only what you think matters, and you need to remember that you are affecting a fellow human being over a stupid TV show, because at the end of the day, that's all Doctor Who is. It's a TV show that we as fans love, but at the end of the day, it's not as important as you and me as human beings. And I don't understand why there has to be so much personal hatred, so many personal attacks against fellow human beings. And I'm talking specifically about Chris Chibnall. I don't care if you don't like what he writes. I don't care if you love what he writes. That's not the point. When you take it to that personal degree, you have taken it too far. Chris Chibnall has not gone out of his way to personally attack fans. You can read it in the subtext of his stories or whatever you reckon. But he has not gone and personally attacked fans. He has just tried to create a show that he loves in the way that he wants to make it, the way that he's had in his head for so many years. And we should just be grateful that it's on flippin' TV and go along for the ride. And I feel quite angry about it at the moment because I've just seen the documentary on John Nathan Turner, a man who was so passionate about what he was doing, but he was so ripped into from all directions about what he was doing. And as a human being, I cannot imagine the kind of pressure that John Nathan Turner was under, and I cannot understand in the slightest measure how Chris Chibnall must be feeling to feel all this hatred towards him as a person, as a fellow human being. So everyone just needs to wake up and snap out of it. This is just a stupid TV show. Okay, so I've come back from stopping the recording. I've had a little bit of a lie down and I'm feeling a little bit better. So now we can get on with the story at hand. The story that I promised that I'd be talking about, which is Eldrad Must Die. Big Finished Monthly Main Range number 172, written by Marc Platt, directed by Ken Bentley. Here is the blurb on the back. A doctor, curse his name, threw me down among the dead, but I endure. I am Eldrad, and I must live. A nuclear icebreaker foundering in Arctic waters, seabirds washed up in the fishing resort of Ambermouth, their wings encrusted with crystals, a shining artifact of uncertain provenance, up for sale on an auction site. all of these things are linked, as the Doctor, Nyssa, Tegan and Turlough are about to discover. Linked to the rebirth of a genocidal tyrant presumed dead many years ago. For the sake of the planets Earth and Castria alike, Eldrad must die.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who. Eldrad Must Die.
Here lies Eldrad.
Mayday! 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 This is Icebreaker Alexander! Alexander! Mayday! Mayday!
I wanted a boat out to the island.
You'll be lucky. I am in 1,000 worlds. Boats go down round here. I cracked in frozen waters. Gibbs, open the door! And nothing gets recovered.
He's coming out.
Keep back!
Something glittered. There. It's a bird. A big one.
The reactor housing.
It's not moving.
Look at its wings.
Poor thing.
Its feathers are full of crystals.
It's covered in ice.
It's not ice, sir. It's more like quartz.
I am here.
Doctor, their faces.
Don't look at them. Let's just walk away.
Gibbs, is that you?
Crystals. Over their faces like masks.
Eldrad must...
The contamination has spread to humans. Don't look at their eyes. Keep going.
His eyes, sir. They're glowing.
Am Eldrad.
Eldrad must die.
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
Okay, so let's take a look at, first of all, the writer, Marc Platt. Now, he wrote one story for the TV series, the very last story that was made, actually, Ghostlight. And there are many fans out there who love his story Ghostlight. But I've got to admit that I myself am one of those fans. I love the story. But I have to admit, when I first saw it, I didn't quite understand it. It is true that all the clues for Ghostlight and what it all means are in the story. But you really have to go in and listen carefully for those points to come out so that you can understand in your mind, because the science fiction concepts are so different. You've actually got to change your way of thinking to a degree to understand that particular story. It's not spelled out to you. And sometimes that's a great thing with Marc Platt's writing. You don't want everything spelled out to you at times. You want things put in a way that make you think. And Ghostlight was a perfect example of that. On the other hand, Eldrad Must Die is a sequel. It's not a standalone story. So we've got characters that have already been created, and we've got actors who are reprising their parts from the TV series. So how does Marc Platt's script stand up? If you look at his other scripts for Big Finish, probably his most applauded script would be Spare Parts. But I would have to say that that is a little bit harder to understand than some of his other scripts. And I'm thinking of his first one that he did for Big Finish called Lugaroo, which I would definitely like to review at some point. Spare Parts always trumps Lugaroo, but that was an incredible story. I think that was number 19 or number 20 in the range, which you can listen to for free on Spotify. So if you get a chance, if you haven't heard Lugaroo, make sure you jump onto Spotify and have a listen to that if you don't own it already. And perhaps if you do own it, it might be time to dig it out of your collection and play it again. Because that is a wonderful, wonderful example of Marc Platt doing a complex story that you don't have to think about too much. He can do both. He's such a versatile writer. But sometimes I have to admit, when I listen to a Marc Platt script, I find if I see his name on something, I have to think, okay, am I in the mood for Marc Platt? Because he makes you think so much that sometimes I feel a little bit tired at the end of it. And if I am feeling tired before I start the story, I may skip it because I know I'm going to have to put in that extra effort to think about it. Is that the case with Eldrad Must Die? I would say 50-50. There are some pretty complex elements within Eldrad Must Die that Marc Platt has weaved into his story. But there are also those elements from the Hand of Fear that we can relate to as well. We've got a different TARDIS team that we have to remember. If you haven't heard this particular TARDIS team before, Fifth Doctor, Turlough, Nyssa and Tegan, it's a slightly different TARDIS team than the one that was on TV, because Nyssa is actually older in this. Because in the audios, they first went, the Doctor, Turlough and Tegan came across Nyssa. I can't remember the exact story. I think it might be Cobwebs. They came across Nyssa when she was maybe 20 or 30 years older, had a family, had a son called Adric, and they picked her up and she started travelling with them again in her chronological time stream 20 years later. So this is an older Nyssa that we're dealing with here. So that is interesting as well. One thing I loved about this particular period when you were purchasing the CDs is that it had writers and directors' notes in them. So I'm going to read the writer's notes that Marc Platt put in here. He says, "So the great crystalline criminal Eldrad is dead, is he? At the end of the Hand of Fear, even the Fourth Doctor doesn't seem sure. But he throws Eldrad's ring down the chasm on Castria after its owner and leaves anyway. That's a bit careless. An intriguing question is how a classic story would have panned out with a different Doctor and different companions. The Fifth Doctor is more concerned and fastidious. Unlike the Fourth, he's a worrier. His companions are more demonstrative, even bolshier. Would that make matters even worse? And what about the other bits of Eldrad? The fragments that were blasted in all directions across the galaxy when they should have been totally obliterated. Surely even the smallest silicon smithereen could regenerate into yet another Eldrad. But will it be male or female? Animal, vegetable or mineral? How would it cope without the original Eldrad's genetic ring? And shouldn't someone responsible be doing something to clear up the mess? I've written a few prequels and sequels featuring established Doctor Who adversaries, but there's an extra thrill when amongst an excellent cast, the creator of several iconic villains takes up one of his mantles again. And Stephen Thorne is simply wonderful returning as Eldrad. But which Eldrad? Old or new? Regenerated or simply left behind? So they're the writer's notes from Marc Platt. Eldrad Must Die was released in 2013, so quite a while ago now. And I love the fact that the characters introduced are very interesting. There's a character that comes in called Charlie Gibbs, played by very, very famous and prolific actor Pip Torrens. He's done heaps and heaps of stuff. He comes in as Charlie Gibbs. He's an old school friend of Turlough's, who isn't quite as innocent as he seems. And Pip Torrens is in The Crown. And another actor who is in the cast is Nancy Carroll. She's from the Crown as well, playing a character called Mulcris. And Stephen Thorne. It is wonderful, absolutely wonderful to hear Stephen Thorne reprising his role as Eldrad. And it's great that this isn't just set in one spot. This is set between Earth and well, it's not between Earth and Castria, but the story takes place on both planets, just as the Hand of Fear does as well. And I think Ken Bentley, the director, who is incidentally still working for Big Finish, but not working so much on the Big Finish monthlies. He's working more on the box sets and some of the spin-offs now. He came on board and did many of the monthly audios around this time. I think he felt a particular responsibility to pay homage to Elizabeth Sladen and her performance as the possessed Sarah Jane Smith. And he too has some writer's notes in the sleeve of the CD, which I want to read out to you. Ken says, "I've been responsible for helping Big Finish recreate a number of villains from the television series, but none have required so much attention to detail as this one. Naturally, Stephen Thorne is magnificent as Eldrad, fitting right back into his boots like it was yesterday. But it's the nature of possession that had the biggest impact on our work. Elizabeth Sladen created such a unique performance in The Hand of Fear, unlike any other possession I've seen. It was mercurial. 35 years later, it's our job not to copy, but to recreate such a possession. in a way that's recognisable to the listener, yet still unique to the characters in our story and the actors playing them. It wasn't a difficult or painful task, but it forced us to challenge ourselves more than we might if we were creating this for the first time. Elizabeth is such a popular actress and Sarah Jane such an enduring character that I felt we owed it to her to allow her to inform our work as much as possible. This one's for her. So you can see there that Ken's focus was on the performance of Elizabeth Sladen when she was playing that part in The Hand of Fear. And it was an important role for Elizabeth Sladen too. It wasn't not only a very unique take on that possession of her by Eldrad, but it was her last story. So it was an important story in many respects. It's great to be able to see that get a Blu-ray release in the next few months. I did struggle a little with some of the concepts of the story. For instance, why did the Castrians need to send someone out to look for all the bits of shattered remains of Eldrad when they put him in the obliteration chamber? Not quite sure why they didn't think of that in the first place, to make sure all the bits of him didn't go flying off into outer space with the possibility of regeneration. But that's only a minor niggling point. This is a wonderful, wonderful audio story to listen to, full of nostalgia, but also great performances from Pip Torrens especially. Mark Strickson is great too. And it's always good to see that team together. They have such a chemistry. Janet Fielding and Peter Davison, they just take you right back to the early 80s when they were stars of the small screen. So overall, I would say that this is not Marc Platt's best work, although Marc Platt has done so much work. I really don't like to judge pieces of work by what's best and what's not so good, because it's the universe of Doctor Who is so varied that you can't possibly have one piece of work that's the same as the other, and the stories are so different and complex that they're hard to even compare to. But on the level that I go into a Marc Platt story and I think to myself, am I going to want to listen to this because it's going to make me tired? Or am I so tired I don't even want to start to listen to this? Or will I go into this and just envelop myself in the world that he creates? Well, I would be more inclined to think that, and I'll compare that with another story that really makes me tired. I love the Unbound stories, but Marc Platt's Unbound stories, Old Mortality and A Storm of Angels, those ones make me feel really tired. It's interesting how Marc Platt's storytelling does that, because often he'll take a simple idea like he did with that original story that he had produced on TV, Ghostlight. It is a very simple story, but it's filled with such complex characterization and so much fascinating detail that the simplicity of the story sometimes gets lost. And you've really got to try and get out of his characterization and world building to actually get the sense of that simple story. So, yeah, those Unbound stories that he did, I love Jeffrey Balden at playing the Doctor, but I often find myself skipping those because those ones really take the energy out of me, which is something that can't be said for Spare Parts. It's one that I'll go to anytime, no matter what. It's complex, but it's not so complex that the story is lost. I guess because we've got an established storyline. We all know the story of the Cybermen and where they came from, so we've got that to work on. He doesn't have to build that world. So in that sense, Spare Parts is different. But Eldrad Must Die is sort of in between. It takes the world that was created in The Hand of Fear, the TV episode, but it puts the Marc Platt complexity over the top of it, and with a brilliant cast in there. It's one that I would not hesitate to put on any time. But that also comes with a word of warning that it does take a little more effort to absorb than, say, Spare Parts, because we know less about the world of Castria than we know about the Cybermen origin story. So I hope that makes just a little bit of sense. Thank you, Marc Platt. Thank you for such a wonderful cast too, Big Finish. Thank you, Big Finish, for reprising those characters and getting Stephen Thorne to recreate that role. Because sadly, with Stephen Thorne, was it last year that he died or a couple of years ago? I can't remember. But he's no longer with us, so we're not able to get that role reprised again. It's great to have that one in the can. And such a beautiful voice to have going through your head. So Eldrad Must Die is number 172 on the Big Finish monthly audio range. So grab yourself a copy of that if you haven't done so already at bigfinish.com. It is one of the ones that is still available on CD. So if you're looking to fill your CD collection while you can, make sure you do, because as the years go by, the CD stocks of these audios will be depleted and they're not going to be reprinted because it's not how people listen anymore. I love the CDs for the artwork, but unfortunately I don't get the CDs anymore. Number one, because I'm located in Australia and the postage is very high. But number two, and this is probably what convinced me, I could probably manage the cost if it wasn't for the fact that all the audios I listen to through the app anyway. So that kind of made up my mind. If I can just have the audios in the cloud with Big Finish, download them onto the app when I need them, that is all I need. But I do like, I must say I'm old school. I like holding a physical product in my hand, being able to flick through the sleeve notes, read the writer's notes, read the director's notes, look at the cast photos, that kind of thing. I will say to Big Finish, if you happen to be listening, you might want to go and check the photos on your behind the scenes section of Eldrad Must Die, because that doesn't match up with the cast. So just check on that, Big Finish. Some of those details are a little bit incorrect, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, does it? So there you go, Eldrad Must Die. Grab it, listen to it, love it. So to finish up this episode of the Sirens of Audio, I've got a quick tip for you. It hasn't been released at the time of recording, but it will be any time between now and the end of March. It is the Lives of Captain Jack Volume 3 will be coming out. So if you didn't get enough of Captain Jack in Series 12 of Doctor Who on the TV, make sure you grab yourself a copy of this. This is going to be a good one, because not only does it star John Barrowman as Captain Jack, but it's also got Camille Kaduri as Jackie Tyler and Alex Kingston as Riversong. And I am one who can't get enough of both of those. Recently, having just heard Camille Kaduri in some of the Rose Tyler Dimension Canon audios, absolutely sensational. I have forgotten how much I enjoyed Camille Kaduri. She's wonderful. And the same goes for River. Can never get enough of River. And these spin-offs where they deal with these lives, Captain Jack, Diary of Riversong, the stories are always top-notch, absolutely top-notch. So here's a little sneak preview of the Lives of Captain Jack Volume 3.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together in front of the holy modem to witness the joining together in marriage of
Captain Jack Harkness
and
Riversong.
From Big Finish Productions, The Lives of Captain Jack, Volume 3.
I'm in space, and that's amazing. Yes, really, really amazing.
I know, isn't it?
Surrounded by aliens. Amazing.
Do you know what vampires are?
Elders, nobles.
Monsters!
Don't talk about Her Majesty like that.
I need to know who I'm letting into my temple.
Queen Carla needs urgent assistance. Captain Jack would help us. The hero from the stars, the man with 1,000 lives.
I already told you Captain Jack isn't here. Oh, sorry, ma'am. I just threw my chips all over your weapon.
It's no weapon. It's magical scrying glass. You want me tell you your fortune?
Not interested. I want to know why you're trying to kill the doctor.
I have to. It is my destiny.
You. It's you.
Sorry. Have we met?
Big Finish. We love stories.
Stay out of my way, Jack Harkness.
She's gone. Who's Jack Harkness?
So there you go, the Lives of Captain Jack, Volume 3. will be available before the end of the month of March 2020. And if you haven't heard any of the Captain Jack box sets prior to now, oh, you're in for a treat. Especially the last one, where he pretends to be the $6 Colin Baker for a while. That is hilarious. I love it. Good on you, John Barrowman. So that's it for this installment. Next week, we're going to be going back at a sentimental look at the Chimes of Midnight, my personal favourite Big Finish audio. It's my favourite audio, but it was also my the very first one I listened to all those years ago. So it's one of those funny things when I read articles where they talk about Paul McGann having a one-off installment in Doctor Who. I think it's very funny that the audios of Paul McGann get overlooked. So we're going to have a look at Paul McGann on audio, and specifically the Chimes of Midnight next time on the Sirens of Audio. So you can contact me for any feedback whatsoever at Audio Sirens on Twitter and sirensofaudio@gmail.com on the email. I haven't put a Facebook page together yet, but I'm going to soon. So let me know your thoughts on the next episode, Chimes of Midnight. Love to hear from you. Oh, you can also go to anchor.fm/Sirens of Audio, and you can leave an audio message, a 1-minute clip that I will play on an installment of the podcast. So do your worst, fans. But while Doctor Who is off the TV, you must listen to audio drama, because audio drama rocks!